Opening up on Friday nationwide in theaters is called Audrey's Children, and it's about Dr. Audrey Evans, and she is the woman who created the Ronald McDonald House, but so much more than that as well. So obviously the ties are right here in Philadelphia. Yeah. And we're happy to welcome the writer and producer of the film, Julia Fisher Farbman, is here. How you doing, Julia?
I'm great. That's such an amazing introduction. Can I come with you guys all the time?
Absolutely. Most definitely. Where are you from, Julia?
I'm from Villanova.
So, right.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you went to Drexel, right?
I did.
And NYU as well.
For a hot sec. I did their summer program because I needed to know how to make a movie so that I could make this movie.
Okay, what were you studying at Drexel?
Communications.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
I'm very good at talking.
Everything's focused, and you are. In fact, we had to slow the roll because you're giving us all sorts of great information prior to coming on air. This was your first script.
Yes, first movie.
First script.
First everything.
And producing alongside of it.
Yes.
So you took the dive into the deep end, and you're off and running.
Yes, I was a little bit crazy, insane probably to do this. Very rose-colored glasses going into this. Had this very lofty idea that I had to do this film. I knew Audrey and loved her my whole life, and I knew I needed to do this.
It was a pure passion. That
completely.
The best things come from that.
Yes.
By the way, the film stars Natalie Dormer as Audrey Evans, which is she's phenomenal. Clancy Brown
playing
for crying out loud as C. Everett Koop in the movie, which is amazing. I love films like this. I love this genre. Recently, and I'm starting to seek out movies that I didn't know existed before that are along these lines. My wife and I watched a movie recently about the creators of in vitro fertilization, and that blew me away. I recently watched On the Basis of Sex, which was a Ruth Bader Ginsburg story. It was amazing as well. And I love especially the women's story in a time frame when they had to struggle for their voice to be heard, and they end up becoming just creating things that are beyond our imagination. So her story falls in line. How have you known her your whole life, or how did you know her your whole life?
Yes, and thank you for saying that because Audrey really is a hidden figure.
Yeah.
My family, we were family friends. They were involved in the first Ronald McDonald House with Audrey and supporting the Children's Cancer Center at CHOP. So I just kind of grew up around this incredible human. And it wasn't until I was an adult when I realized, oh my God, this woman isn't a hero. Like, she's not just Audrey, she's Audrey.
Right.
And then, so this is, Marissa came in, our executive, our producer on the other side of that glass there. We keep her there because she can scratch. But the truth of the matter is that she said this is her favorite story that's not well known in this area because it's such a point of pride. And Preston talks about people not being recognized in industry. Now, she was not able to become a doctor in England.
That's right.
Had to come to the United States in the 60s, which would allow women to become doctors. And then, it's not enough that she's doing all that she's doing with CHOP. The Ronald McDonald House is such an amazing organization. And I want to see the film. And the trailers depicted her mindset, obviously with dialogue that you wrote about the importance of the fact that people wanted to be in proximity to family members receiving treatment but couldn't pay for a hotel. These things that just, everyone has been touched by cancer at some level. And when these costs start to be put in front of you, it's such a daunting, terrifying thing.
Well, they were like cutting the treatment short.
Cutting the treatment short because they couldn't stay. And here comes this wonderful thing from this wonderful woman.
Exactly. And Audrey created it out of necessity. She didn't wake up and say, I'm going to create an organization that has 1,000 programs in 62 countries and helps millions of people every year. She woke up and said, I need to treat my patients. At the time that she was at CHOP in 1969, unfortunately, most of the children weren't making it. And she was determined to change that. So she, throughout the course of our film, was transforming care for these children. And simultaneously, she's like, I need to keep them in town long enough so that I can actually treat them. So it was a necessity. It wasn't this grand plan. It was just, she was very pragmatic. And just mission oriented. And Audrey believed she was put here to make a difference in the lives of children.
And did.
Clearly still is.
Right, yes.
Well, yeah, and it's great. That's why that you're telling this story. So I also have a communications degree, and the very first package I put together was on the Ronald McDonald House. I worked for UPM 57, which doesn't exist anymore, but I put it together on that. So I was aware of her. I never got to meet her. I didn't interview her. We went to the house and, talked to some people there. But I think what's so great great about the Ronald McDonald House, a lot of charities that you donate to, like sometimes you don't know where the money's going. You have to do a little research to know where it's going. Like with this house, you see it. It's there. It's built. There's people inside. And when I went, I talked to those people staying there who were saying, yes, I'm here with my 3 kids, one who's getting treatment and 2 others that I had to bring along.
Yeah.
And we're staying here for free.
Exactly. In the Ronald McDonald House Charities is absolutely incredible. They've been partners of the film, along with CHOP. And the Philadelphia House, in particular, the first house in the world, opened their arms to us. We actually filmed a scene at the house, and we went there with the cast and our director and volunteered. And it's just, like you said, you see real time exactly where all the support is going to, and you see the difference it makes for families. So I know Audrey, all the way up until she passed away, would go all the time, and she was in awe of the impact that was still being had. I don't think she even realized it was from her, honestly.
Yeah, it's something that exceeded her even in what it's done, yeah.
So in preparation for you stopping by, I wanted to find out a little bit more about her because obviously we know about the Ronald McDonald House and the impact there. But what I didn't know is who created it and why. But not only that, her story beyond that, because she did all this work with neuroblastoma.
Yes.
Is that the bigger story here?
I would say, yes, that is the big story, but they're very intertwined.
Right.
Because Audrey took a total care approach to care. So meaning it wasn't just the medical needs of the child, it was the emotional, financial, and familial needs. So you see throughout the course of the film the intersection of where those worlds meet and how it's evolved into what it is today. But absolutely, Audrey is the mother of neuroblastoma, and neuroblastoma is the deadliest solid tumor in pediatric cancer. So when she arrives in Philadelphia, 90% of the children weren't surviving. And Audrey was very, very innovative and very focused on research, which is just as important now as it was 50 years ago. She was pushing chemotherapy and combination chemotherapy at a time when people were adamant that chemotherapy was poison and you should keep it far away. And we know, of course, it still has negative side effects, but it was certainly the best option available. So not only was she pushing innovative treatments, but she created the staging system, which was the first ever for neuroblastoma. And now we think of staging systems, cancer in stages 1, 2, 3, 4.
As a standard.
As a standard.
Yeah.
But in 1969, she was kind of inventing the wheel, and she did it on note cards. So you see this brilliant woman on a mission to fulfill her purpose in every aspect of her life throughout the course of our film. And I mean, I think it's inspiring.
Yes.
Just a little bit.
We all do. That's why we're excited for the movie.
Julie, it's remarkable because we're lucky in Philadelphia to have CHOP, to have the Ronald McDonald House, to have people like Audrey who are able to do these types of things. My nephew had leukemia. He's in remission. He's doing really well. And something that I learned early on in his treatment was that people used to treat pediatric cancer like they would treat adult cancer.
Exactly.
They wouldn't treat children any differently. So what did Audrey do to help change that?
The staging system was huge. She said we can't treat all children the same. And not only can we not treat all children the same, you can't treat children the same as adults.
Right.
And the same thing goes with research. The drugs, the way that you approach them as adult and not exactly.
They wouldn't treat children any differently. So what did Audrey do to help change that?
The staging system was huge. She said we can't treat all children the same. And not only can we not treat all children the same, you can't treat children the same as adults.
Right.
And the same thing goes with research. The drugs, the way that you approach pediatric cancer research is a completely different situation than adult cancer. And, you think about today and the fact that most of funding for pediatric cancer comes from the government funding and how crucial it is to then drive a cure in the future. And that is exactly what Audrey was saying in the film. She was rallying the government. She was talking to reporters about the importance of supporting research because the only way to change the future is to actually create new things. So she was doing that through the staging system. She was doing that through clinical trials, and she was moving very quickly. And you see that throughout the course of the film. And you get behind her because she's fighting a battle where she's up against the clock. And so she may not always go about it the way that is proper or correct. To put it lightly.
Yeah.
But that's the only way you can create change.
Well, these are the Norma Rays and the people who have to take those bold steps. You talk about treating children, and also she apparently innovated ways in help. you have to be present for your own healing. To fight cancer, to heal and go through that process, you have to be aware, you have to be able to process, you have to have the attitude, the fight attitude. And she also worked on ways of relaying that information usably to children so that they could help with that process as well. If you think it's incomprehensible for an adult to wrap their minds around it, a child having to process that is a wholly other thing.
Audrey truly connected better to children than adults, in my opinion. She loved children. That's why the movie is called Audrey's Children. She saw every single patient as her child, as her own, and treated them as such. She would bring animals into hospital facilities. She was notorious for having little animals popping out of her sleeves and getting in trouble all the time. But as she said constantly, all's fair with kids with cancer. All we need to do is make their day better, make their treatment better. And Audrey was unbelievable in the sense that faith was very, very important to her. And, you know, when the treatment wasn't working and all other options were out, she could actually talk to children about heaven and help transition that for them and take the fear away.
You need those. That's angelic work.
It's angelic.
It's also the most gut twisting thing to have to do, and it's only the strongest and special people who can do that.
Completely. And she believed what she was saying, though. Like, she talked about heaven as a beautiful place where you meet your friends and you can bring your bongo drums. And she would talk to children about this regularly because, remember, at the time she started, that was the reality.
Yeah.
And so it was just, she was a special, special person, brilliant, kind, witty, and just, I feel like she changed so many lives. I don't feel like it. She did.
Well, she did. There are people walking around, and people related to those people are walking around and on and on and on because of the work.
Go ahead.
No, you continue, please.
I was just going to say to that, every single screening we've done, at least a handful of people have raised their hand and said, I'm one of Audrey's children.
Wow.
And it literally has taken my breath away every single time.
Wow.
And it's exactly what you said.
Well, that's the name of the film, Audrey's Children. It opens on Friday. Now, we haven't seen the film yet. I've watched the trailer, and I did have a question about something that I saw in there. And since you were close personal friends with her, I want to know if this was true or not. There's a scene where C. Everett Koop is swimming, he's getting his laps in.
Oh, yes.
And she is trying to make a point with him, and he's kind of brushing her off. Fully clothed, she jumps in the pool in front of him, and he's like, what is wrong with you? And just to drive home how serious she was about this. Did that really happen?
You know, that is the question I get asked the most. It did not. However,
okay.
it is very much something she would do, 1,000%.
Okay.
She did anything it took to do what she needed to do for her children. So if C. Everett Koop was in a pool and she needed to talk to him, I know 1,000,000% that she would have done that.
But in movies, you have to do things like that to get that point across.
Exactly.
She may not have
Shorthand.
jumped in a pool, but like that's just who she was. So to get how, who she was as a person out, you have to create a scene like that.
Thank you. Exactly.
It's a cinematic shorthand. Now, as the writer, you were on the set a lot, if not all the time.
All the time.
You're working with children, and it's my understanding that the director Amy Cannon Mann, who is Michael Mann's daughter, the idea was let them improv because you can't let the kids be the kids, and so as the writer. How are you? Is that okay for you? It's got to be, right? Because in the moment, it's the most honest, real reaction from kids.
Absolutely. And Amy was incredible. She did just a gorgeous job directing this film. Well, of course, there was a script, but at some point, you have to go off the pages and take it to another place. And
there was no point at which you went, that was a good page.
No, never, because the actors, every single person who was on our set was brought to this project, I believe, by a bigger purpose. From the children to Natalie, everybody in between. And so when they were on set, it even though we were on set, it didn't feel that way. It felt like we were all a part of something really special. So things that were coming out naturally were things that I believe they were channeling as if they were in this situation. And mind you, we shot this in 23 days in Philadelphia.
That's unheard of.
23 days.
The
whole movie in 23 days.
Wow.
So we were in very close confines very quickly. And so you can imagine the types of things that happen when you're in those settings. It's beautiful, and you have to let things happen as they are.
So Preston mentioned earlier how much he loves Natalie Dormer, and we all do, and she's the star. I love love Jimmy Simpson, and he's one of the co-stars. He plays cricket on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He played Lyle the intern on Letterman years and years ago, and I just think the dude is enormously talented. He's incredibly funny. What was he like as an actor in this movie, and what role does he play?
Jimmy Simpson is incredible, and he's an amazing human being. I'm very fortunate to call him and the other cast friends now. Jimmy plays Dr. Dan Danjo, who is also a revolutionary pediatric oncologist, and he's the yin to the yang of Audrey Evans, who is this huge personality, just on a mission, goes about it her own way, and Jimmy is very by the books, quiet, smart, and supportive.
Which is totally atypical to the characters he plays. He plays deranged characters.
I know, but it's actually very much how Jimmy is as a person. He's a very supportive, kind soul. And he took to Dan perfectly. He got to meet Dan's family. And Dan was also a titan in the industry, but he was just very quiet.
Different way.
So the thing that's really beautiful to see in the film is this marriage of the minds. Like, they had a real love in the work that they did. They shared a same passion. And then they got married when Audrey was 79 and Dan was 82.
Wow,
It was a lifetime of just a beautiful relationship and life well lived for both of them.
So you had said that at the beginning, or maybe we were off air, and you said that it's taken 7 years for this whole thing to get together. And a big part of that is getting people to pay attention to the fact that this is a story worth telling, and this version of it is the story that we want, that you need to go with. You have to raise money. You have to do so much stuff. Yeah, right? You have spent the last 7 years slugging away, begging people to invest on this, I would imagine, right?
It's interesting. It took years. The first 2 years were writing the script, and then it took about a year and some change to raise the financing. I don't ever say the budget, but it was a couple $1 million. And people, their lives were changed because of this woman that I was fortunate enough to know. And so Audrey was very involved, and she actually passed away while we were filming in 2022.
Okay.
But before that, she got to meet the cast and the director, and Natalie got to hold her hand and tell her what was happening. I got to show her footage, and she said it was really good. And for Audrey, that means it's the best thing in the world because her standards were so high. It's the best endorsement I could get.
I have to ask you, as a local, you're shooting on this 21-day schedule. It's my understanding that you actually got the go-ahead, the film bureau and everybody involved was as wonderful as could be. You got to shut down City Hall.
Yeah.
It's got to be cool when this area. These are places you've been to. Any memories? Because my question would be, at the time you were shooting, I'm not sure if this was the case. How many years ago was it shot?
2022.
2022.
Yeah.
Okay, so lately, City Hall in that area has become quite the place to do street racing and motorcycles.
Yes.
Did you?
That was still a thing.
That was still a thing.
That was still a
so
thing.
what was all that like, and what cool access did you get? Obviously, you're on a film, you're working, and you're committed, and you're dialed into that. But was there any cool experiences from the locations you got to shoot in?
Oh my God, yes. Philadelphia was such a proud moment for me as a Philadelphian filming this movie here. And it's a Philadelphia story. This is where Audrey's life and legacy was. But actually that night that you mentioned, filming at City Hall, when we shut it down, it was a Friday or a Saturday for like hours. And I'm so sorry anybody who's listening. if you were stuck in traffic, that was totally us. But it was the most surreal experience for me, standing in the center with Natalie in her ball gown and Jimmy in his tuxedo. And Natalie's just like, this is what the magic of movies. It's like this moment. Don't ever forget this moment. Like you did this. And that was like honestly out of body, because when you're in it, it was very stressful. There was so much happening, not only writing it, but as the producer, and I have two wonderful producing partners as well. But it was like you're managing hundreds of people, you're updating the script real time, you're trying to make sure the locations are right. Like there's so much happening that it was really a special moment to kind of step back and be like, wow,
you can't let
this world.
You can't let it go past. I mean,
can't.
That's the mistake a lot of us make, is that you get caught up in the minutia and you're like, I should have taken more time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I even felt that way. We took over a defunct hospital in Chester where we kind of made our chop, where we couldn't build sets, but we, made it into our own in a really incredible way. Our production designer, Amber Uncle, was amazing. But even being there and seeing the world we created for CHOP, Madeline Bell, the CEO of CHOP, came to set one day. And she's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm being transported back in time. And that was like the biggest compliment for me, because I hold her to such high regard, and she wrote a book about that time period, so she understands it. So I feel like authenticity, we nailed it.
You got thumbs up all over the place.
I surely hope so.
If you're just tuning in, it's Julia Fisher Farbman, who we're talking to, writer and producer of Audrey's Children, which is out on Friday, and it's about Dr. Audrey Evans and the creation of Ronald McDonald House and all these other wonderful things that she achieved. Do you, in the film, touch on the Ronald McDonald House connection to the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes, they're our Super Bowl champs.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, look, the bulk of the story, it's about Audrey. There's only so many stories you can tell, but you see, without giving it away, the impetus for the Ronald McDonald House charities. You see the Eagles, you actually see Eagles players in the film, and then you see Jimmy Murray, who's the co-founder, and his role that he played in helping to start the first house. So it's very much woven throughout the story. It's not the full story of the Ronald McDonald House. I hope that when you see this movie, you understand the need for the Ronald McDonald House, and then you go and look up more and learn about all the wonderful things they do, and the Eagles, of course.
In 2014, I had prostate cancer, had it removed, and Dr. Mike Sirigliano, my champion, great job. I'm doing well. I'm doing fantastic. But I started to get these accolades for, beating cancer in my battle. It was not a battle. And my reply would always be, there are children in CHOP right now who are waging battles. And it couldn't be in a finer place. And then that in unison with, the Ronald McDonald House and that 1-2 punch, and having donated some things to Ronald McDonald House and knowing that the kids would use it and so on and so forth. There's no better feeling in the world to tie into that, because I remember, I was an adult man, and when I got the diagnosis, I'm like, what? I mean, you can't even process it. To know that these kids and these families, through this fine woman's work have had, their lives bettered and subsequent generations bettered because of this dream, because of good people who intercede. It means everything. So to me, I can't see how this is not going to be a hit for you, because everyone has been touched by cancer. And if you want to champion people who work on your behalf, you may not know them, but this is a good way to sort of tacitly do that.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I'm glad to hear you're doing well.
Yeah.
But, Audrey says, spoilers, it is the last thing you see in the movie, real Audrey in the credits, so stay through the credits. Okay. And she says, when you hear the word cancer, it's the worst thing that could happen to your child. You'll probably think, what worse could happen?
Yeah.
And she says, if you see this movie, do remember it's not the end. And that's because there are real heroes like Audrey working every single day at CHOP, by the way.
Yeah.
And of course, the Ronald McDonald House Charities, who are making a better future for these children. And my God, if we can't all get behind supporting children who are in these moments, then I don't know what we can all get behind.
If not for Audrey, when my nephew was diagnosed, the doctors, the oncologist, pediatric oncologist, they said he's likely going to survive, right? It's going to be a really difficult battle. It's going to be tough on Luke. It's going to be tough on the entire family, but he'll make it through. I don't know if that would be the case had he been diagnosed in 1968 or 1969. And if not for the work that she had done, we might have lost the kid, and there are countless others just like what Luke went through. So what message would you convey to, just to continue on what she started and what her fight is and was?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think if Audrey were here, she would want me to focus, of course, on the children and the research. I think that given everything going on in the world right now, she would say, we must support the children. We need to cure cancer. She desperately, desperately wanted to cure cancer. When I would interview her, she said, the one thing she's disappointed in was that she couldn't cure cancer. And she believed that she could do it. And she stayed involved all the way up until the time she passed away. She was up to date on all the medical journals. Her protege, John Maris at CHOP, would keep her in the loop of everything happening. And she used to say to me, I couldn't get the job done, but I know it's going to happen. And we can't take our foot off the gas. And so I hope that when people see this film, they feel inspired that one person really can change the world and have a ripple effect. And even if you can't try to cure cancer and make a huge dent like Audrey did, we can do it by just being good humans who care about people, which seems to get lost these days. And she was just one of those people who I would walk around Rittenhouse Square with her all the time. And she would literally stop and cuddle babies. And she would, which made it, as you can imagine in Philadelphia, a little dicey. Sometimes. People would be like,
stranger danger.
Who is this lady?
Stranger danger.
And immediately I would be like, do you know who you're talking to? She is the co-founder of the Ronald McDonald House Charity. She's a revolutionary oncologist. And they're like, okay, she can talk to my baby. But that's just who she was.
Who was that crazy woman?
Who was that crazy woman? I'm like, she's a rock star. You should be lucky. Anyway, I was her hype woman for sure.
No.
But she just reminds you of the goodness in humanity. And I hope that's what people take away.
Well, congratulations. Now, the rumor is that your next movie is going to be a crazy frat comedy. Is that correct?
You nailed it. You're going to star in it, right?
Going to be a complete 180.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Well, do you have anything else you're working on? You probably can't share with us, but you are working on more films?
I can share.
Well,
yes, certainly. I'm working on a mental health musical.
Wow.
Because I know how to pick topics that people want to watch. No, I really feel
this is through Marvel, correct?
I feel like it's a privilege to be a storyteller, and I personally feel a really huge responsibility to shed light on incredible humans like Audrey, or subject matters that people feel that maybe aren't represented, and I just hope people feel a little less alone in the world. So that's my goal.
It's a noble goal.
Yeah, it is.
Let's see how we do.
So the movie opens this weekend. Go and see it. It is called Audrey's Children. Stars Natalie Dormer, Clancy Brown, and many other great actors. And it's about Dr. Audrey Evans right here in Philly. Brought this to life. Julia, congratulations.
Thank
we
you.
wish you nothing but success. And hopefully we'll see you again for
I
the
would love to.
mental health musical.
Yes.
I like that title, by the way. Mental health musical. That should just be
It sells itself.
All right. Julia Fisher Farbman, thank you for being here.